on January 24th, 1948, in the cold courtyard of Montelupish prison. In Krakow, the man once responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands took heavy steps toward the place of execution. His name, Erich Muhsfeldt, a former SS non-commissioned officer who held a key role in the crematoria at Auschwitz and Majdanek, soon after the sentence was carried out, closing the life of one of the most severely punished figures for crimes tied to the Holocaust. How could an ordinary baker become a cog in the machinery of repression? In what ways did he take part in inhumane operations? And why were his remains later transferred to a medical school? This is not merely a documentary account of one individual within the SS apparatus during World War II. It is a reminder that evil can look very ordinary. Stay to the end of the video to follow the full journey from his days as a humble baker to becoming a notorious central figure at Auschwitz. Erich Muhsfeldt was born on February 18, 1913, in the small town of Neubrück, in Brandenburg in the German Empire. He came from a working-class family. His father did manual labor to support the household. Muhsfeldt's childhood was fairly uneventful, neither destitute nor full of opportunity. He completed 8 years of basic schooling, which was typical for Germany's working class at the time. At age 17, Muhsfeldt trained as a baker. The work was steady. He soon married and had a son. In his early years, all signs suggested he would lead an ordinary life. The turning point came in 1933, when power in Germany passed to the National Socialist Party amid the charged political climate. Muhsfeldt left the bakery and joined the SA, the Sturmabteilung, the party's paramilitary formation, active mainly in the streets. His participation was voluntary, a personal choice, not the result of coercion. In 1937, he transferred to the SS, Schutzstaffel, the regime's principal security organization. This move meant advancement in status and a deeper commitment to National Socialist ideology. Just 2 years later, in 1939, Muhsfeldt formally became a member of the Nazi Party. At that time, Germany was preparing for war, and the SS oversaw the system of camps and forced labor in the broader context of political repression. According to some post-war archival records, this process was his own deliberate choice, rather than stepping back. He successively joined paramilitary organizations and the ruling party. This marked a clear ideological escalation. From a baker, Muhsfeldt moved into the regime's power structure. That path led to serious human rights violations at camps they operated, such as Auschwitz and Majdanek. After World War I, Germany sank into crisis. The Treaty of Versailles imposed heavy reparations. Hyperinflation rendered the mark nearly worthless, and unemployment spread. For many young workers like Muhsfeldt, pro-regime paramilitary groups offered both opportunities and a sense of support. The SA was a mass organization. It promoted discipline, job prospects, uniforms, and a feeling of belonging for segments of youth. In that environment, street-level political confrontations were frequent. However, by 1934, the Night of the Long Knives changed the entire landscape. Hitler carried out an internal purge. Many SA commanders were arrested and removed from the system. After this event, the SS was granted additional authority, reporting directly to the top leadership. Under Hitler and Himmler, the decision to leave the SA and join the SS shows he chose to remain within the ranks of power. From that point on, coercion was no longer spontaneous, but institutionalized by the state apparatus. In 1940, Erich Muhsfeldt joined the SS Totenkopf Division, a unit that had previously overseen the system of detention and forced labor camps. In August of the same year, he was assigned to Auschwitz. The camp was expanding and would later become a key site in the regime's repressive apparatus. There, Muhsfeldt oversaw forced labor detachments and a prisoner block. From the outset, he instilled fear. Muhsfeldt often carried a baton and was ready to assault prisoners. Witnesses reported instances in which victims did not survive. The atmosphere at Auschwitz at that time was already extremely harsh. Muhsfeldt's presence heightened the fear. He enforced supervisory orders while also actively seeking opportunities to mistreat prisoners. These actions resulted in significant casualties. In late 1941, Erich Muhsfeldt was transferred to Majdanek, a camp near the city of Lublin, Poland. At that time, Majdanek had just been expanded to serve the regime's systematic policies of repression. There, Muhsfeldt held the position of head of the crematorium. He directly influenced operating procedures, including the handling of the remains of large numbers of deceased persons. His official responsibility was to manage crematorium operations. Under Muhsfeldt, that work turned into a pattern of systematic brutality. Survivors testified that Muhsfeldt regularly moved about the camp with an arrogant bearing. He often issued extreme threats openly to spread fear. At least one case was recorded. A young female prisoner panicked and resisted when she learned she was about to be taken away. According to the account, Muhsfeldt ordered her restrained. Afterward, she did not survive there. The incident shocked that section of the camp, while Muhsfeldt showed no emotion. Some prisoners stated that he used extreme violence as a form of deterrence. On one occasion, he ordered a show of force in the processing area, forcing prisoners to witness it. The crimes reached a peak on November 3rd to 4th, 1943, during the operation codenamed Action Erntefest, Harvest Festival. The objective was to eliminate the remaining Jewish prisoners at the Majdanek, Poniatowa, and Troniki camps. In just 2 days, approximately 43,000 people were killed. It was the largest single death toll recorded during the Holocaust. At Majdanek, Jewish prisoners were forced to dig long, wide trenches under the pretext of defensive works. In reality, these trenches were later used for mass burials during the repression campaign. Once the digging was finished, victims were brought in groups and killed on the spot. Gunfire echoed for hours. To drown out the noise, loudspeakers around the camp played classical music at high volume. Witnesses recalled waltzes and choral pieces carrying across the grounds, with chaotic sounds mingling behind the walls. In that setting, Muhsfeldt was physically present. Multiple reports state that he moved around the burial area. He supervised how the site was arranged to maximize space. He observed throughout the day. At times, he pressed subordinates to accelerate the pace of processing, to avoid bottlenecks. To him, the loss of thousands of lives within a few hours was merely a technical task. Beyond the staggering numbers, the methods reveal an industrialized approach to taking life. Afterward, the trenches were hastily filled. Residents of Lublin at the time reportedly heard echoes for 2 days. Majdanek marked Muhsfeldt's emergence as a key link in a brutal campaign of the Holocaust era. There, he directly took part in systematic repression that left tens of thousands dead. He was cold in demeanor, treating human life as mere figures. In May 1944, as trains carrying Jewish people from Hungary arrived one after another, at Auschwitz-Birkenau, Erich Muhsfeldt was reassigned there. By then, he was no longer an ordinary supervisor. Muhsfeldt was put in direct charge of a central unit at Birkenau. His task was to ensure that procedures in key sectors moved quickly. At this point, Muhsfeldt's ruthlessness was fully on display. He treated the taking of life as an administrative routine. Survivors recalled that each day. He inspected the blocks and issued firm orders. He then returned as if he had just finished ordinary work. Yet those decisions meant thousands of deaths. One telling example involved a group of children. Many witnesses stated that when a group of Jewish children from the Warsaw Ghetto was brought to Birkenau, Muhsfeldt wanted to cut formalities to the minimum. He immediately ordered SS guards to escort all of them to a special processing area. Dr. Miklos Niesli, a Hungarian Jewish prisoner forced to work in Joseph Mengelé's laboratory, had close contact with Muhsfeldt. In his memoir, he recounted that on one occasion about 80 prisoners were killed after Muhsfeldt opened fire. Afterward, Muhsfeldt spoke calmly about politics and the war. When Niesli asked whether those actions caused him stress, Muhsfeldt denied it. He claimed his high blood pressure was due to drinking, not to the number of victims. He also said, in effect, that whether the number was small or large made no difference. The case of a 16-year-old girl shows that absolute indifference. After the procedure in the gas chamber ended, she still showed faint signs of life. Niesli intervened, trying to persuade Muhsfeldt to spare her. Muhsfeldt refused and stated that he could not. 30 minutes later, the girl did not survive. His brutality also appeared in the way. He trained and influenced subordinates. Many SS men under him copied violent conduct, beatings, torture, and the forced transfer of victims to the crematorium. Here, indifference took the form of procedural decisions with deadly consequences. These actions show that for Muhsfeldt, taking life was not just a temporary wartime order. It became a daily routine, a task carried out with complete detachment. Under his authority, Auschwitz stood as a symbol of a systematized apparatus of destruction, a stark example of the banality of evil. In mid-1944, as the Soviet Red Army advanced into Poland, the concentration camp system began to falter. In August of that year, Erich Muhsfeldt was sent to the Hungarian front. This was a period when many SS officers were deployed to frontline duty to fill gaps in depleted units. Muhsfeldt saw combat, but was soon wounded, no longer fit for sustained fighting. He was withdrawn from the front. In April 1945, as the war neared its end, Muhsfeldt was assigned to the Flossenburg camp in southern Germany. Established in 1938, it had held tens of thousands of prisoners, including members of the Czechoslovak resistance, German political prisoners, and Jewish prisoners. Late in the war, the camp remained a link in the forced labor system supporting the German war industry. Muhsfeldt's presence at Flossenburg underscores a point. Even as the Third Reich collapsed, those who had held key roles, they were kept on to command. As Allied forces closed in, the SS ordered the evacuation of thousands from the camp. They organized long forced marches, often referred to as death marches. The aim was both to prevent prisoners from falling into enemy hands and to maintain inhumane policies toward them. Conduct during these forced evacuations was later confirmed by witnesses and became a central focus of prosecution. Flossenburg is also associated with a historical event. On April 9, 1945, the German pastor Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a prominent figure in the resistance to the Nazi regime, was executed under a death sentence. At that time, Muhsfeldt was present at the camp. He did not directly take part in that case. Only a few weeks later, in April 1945, U.S. forces liberated Flossenburg. About 30,000 prisoners had been held there. Tens of thousands did not survive due to exhausting forced labor, starvation, or lethal violence. In the final days, Muhsfeldt continued to use weapons against prisoners during forced evacuations. This resulted in many deaths until the camp fell to the Allies. His actions at Flossenburg reveal a chilling consistency, from Auschwitz and Majdanek to the war's final days. Muhsfeldt remained the same. He caused the loss of life under orders, exploited opportunities to do so, and continued even as the Nazi apparatus collapsed. In May 1945, when Germany surrendered, Erich Muhsfeldt fell into Allied hands. He had previously overseen a central unit at earlier camps and had ordered the broad use of weapons at Flossenburg. In January 1947, Muhsfeldt appeared before a U.S. military court. In the Flossenburg case, the court examined actions from the war's final phase. Its focus was the long forced evacuations, commonly called death marches, when the camp was cleared. Many surviving witnesses confirmed his command role and the use of violence during these forced evacuations. Prosecutors presented additional evidence from prisoners and guards. They stated that Muhsfeldt regularly took part directly in violence that led to deaths. At times he used weapons himself. At other times he issued orders to subordinates. These accounts matched earlier records, an SS officer who treated the taking of life as a daily routine. At the close of the trial, the U.S. military court sentenced Erich Muhsfeldt to life imprisonment, but that sentence did not end his legal path. Polish authorities, where much of Muhsfeldt's crimes had taken place, formally requested extradition. They sought to try him in Krakow alongside other former Auschwitz staff. The charges centered on large-scale loss of life and the operation of the crematorium. From a prisoner in a U.S. detention facility, Muhsfeldt was handed over to the Polish side. There, a larger trial directly connected to Auschwitz and Majdanek awaited. On November 24, 1947, in Krakow, Poland, the trial for crimes committed at Auschwitz officially began. On the defendant's bench sat 41 former camp personnel, including Erich Muhsfeldt. The courtroom was packed with judges, prosecutors, attorneys, and many surviving witnesses present. It was one of the largest war crimes trials in post-war Poland. Over the course of a month-long proceeding, witnesses came forward to testify, among them Dr. Miklos Niesli. Many Polish prisoners also testified, stating that Muhsfeldt ordered extreme acts of violence. In many instances, this led to deaths inside the camp. The court also cited Muhsfeldt's own wartime statements as evidence of contempt and active complicity. Records show that he directly supervised this unit at Birkenau during the peak period. He played a role in handling large numbers of victims. Witnesses emphasized that he displayed clear personal cruelty alongside the orders that were issued. On December 22, 1947, after a month of hearings, the Supreme National Tribunal of Poland delivered its verdict. Of the 41 defendants, 23 were sentenced to death, including Erich Muhsfeldt. The remainder received long prison terms. The judgment affirmed Muhsfeldt's personal responsibility for crimes against humanity at Auschwitz from a once powerful SS officer. He became a man facing the highest penalty for the acts he had committed. On January 24, 1948, Erich Muhsfeldt was taken to have his sentence carried out at Montelupich prison in Krakow. The facility was notorious. During the occupation, the Nazi authorities had executed many Polish resistance fighters there. Now, one of the most brutal overseers from Auschwitz and Majdanek faced a death sentence. At the time of the execution, Muhsfeldt was 34. The record notes no final statement. Witnesses said he remained silent, showing neither remorse nor self-justification. The sentence was carried out according to the procedures of the period. A short time later, he was pronounced dead. Afterward, his remains were retained by the authorities. In keeping with practice at the time, they were transferred to Jagiellonian University in Krakow, where they were used for anatomical instruction. Many records note this was a common practice then, using the remains of convicted war criminals for medical education. Ironically, the man who had once held that role ended up in a medical training room. In the university's records, he was listed only as a specimen for teaching purposes, without a name. On January 24th, 1948, Erich Muhsfeldt was taken to have his sentence carried out at Montelupich prison in Krakow. The facility was notorious. During the occupation, the Nazi authorities had executed many Polish resistance fighters there. Now, one of the most brutal overseers from Auschwitz and Majdanek faced a death sentence. At the time of the execution, Muhsfeldt was 34. The record notes no final statement. Witnesses said he remained silent, showing neither remorse nor self-justification. The sentence was carried out according to the procedures of the period. A short time later, he was pronounced dead. Afterward, his remains were retained by the authorities. In keeping with practice at the time, they were transferred to Jagiellonian University in Krakow, where they were used for anatomical instruction. Many records note this was a common practice then, using the remains of convicted war criminals for medical education. Ironically, the man who had once held that role ended up in a medical training room. In the university's records, he was listed only as a specimen for teaching purposes, without a name.